सिद्धांत गोस्वामी श्री सचित महाराज नाम से विरासता की जय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णव की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री श्री किशोर कृष्ण गौर
Oh, yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Jasoda Nandana Brajajana Rajana Jasoda Nandana Brajajana Rajana Jamosira Vanashari Jamuna Tira Vanashari Jaya Rama Vadidari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you everyone for coming. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I don't know if that was 3 or 4 times, but all right. Today we'll be reading from the Srimad-Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, Chapter 45, verses 15 through 19. Of course, only 15 is on the board, and so we'll read that, and then I'll read the rest. Let's see. 15. Okay. Sarvam swam yati sambandhan. Digbya kamsa bayakulan. Yadu vrishni andaka madhu. Darshaha kukuradikan. Sarvam swam gyati sambandhan. Digbya Kamsa Bayakulan Yadu Vrishni Andaka Madhu Darshaha Kukuradikan Sarvan Swangyatsi Sambandkan Bandam Digbya Kamsa Bayakulan Yadu Vrishni Andaka Madhu Darshaha Digbyaha from all directions. Kamsabaya by fear of Kamsa. Akulan disturbed. Yadubrishni Andaka Madhu Darshaha Kukura Adikan. The Yadus, Vrishnis, Andakas, Madhus, Darshahas, Kukuras, and so on. Actually, we'll end right there. So the rest of the word for word isn't on the board, so I'll just read it. Sambachitam, shown honor. Samavashya, consoling them. Videsha, inform regions. Avasha, by living. Korshitan, made weary. Niyavasanyavat, he settled. Swa, in their own. Geheshu, homes. Vitataha, with valuable gifts. Santarpya, gratifying. Vishva, of the universe. Quit, the maker. Translation by the disciples of A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki, and no purports to any of the following verses. So, translation. The Lord then brought all his close family members and other relatives back from the various places to which they had fled in fear of Kamsa. He received the Yadus, Vrishnis, Andakas, Madhus, Darshahas, Kukuras, and other clans with due honor, and he also consoled them, for they were weary of living in foreign lands. Then Lord Krishna, the creator of the universe, resettled them in their homes and gratified them with valuable gifts. So that was texts 15 and 16. So now texts 17 and 18. Translation. The members of these clans, protected by the arms of Lord Krishna and Lord Sankarshan, felt that all their desires were fulfilled. Thus they enjoyed perfect happiness while living at home with their families. Because of the presence of Krishna and Balaram, they no longer suffered from the fever of material existence. Every day these loving devotees could see Mukunda's ever cheerful lotus face, which was decorated with beautiful, merciful, smiling glances. And finally, text 19, translation. Even the most elderly inhabitants of the city appeared youthful, full of strength and vitality, for with their eyes they constantly drank the elixir of Lord Mukunda's lotus face. Om Agyan Samanandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Shakshumilitam Yena Tasma Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitan Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vancha Kapaturubhyascha Kripa Sindubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavinebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktabinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya, Hare Krishna, and thank you everyone for coming. You know, there's many people that offer gratitude, especially first and foremost my brother, Jaya Jagannath Prabhu, and my mother, and also to all the devotees of ISKCON in Chicago, because I've been here for many years, so there's too many people to offer gratitude, but Prabhu, if you remind me at the end of the class, if we have time, I specifically want to offer gratitude. I think he's on the altar right now, Naveen Krishna Prabhu, for a particular reason. So if I forget, remind me. Today, like normal, I like to start today's class, as usual, like my other classes, with there, I wonder if you heard me, with the quote that sets the theme of what we're going to be discussing today. So this is a quote by Douglas Adams, and he says, quote, "The single raindrop never feels responsible for the flood," end quote. Let me repeat that. Quote, "The single raindrop never feels responsible for the flood," end quote. So in this regard, I should be pointing out that just as a continuous flood of water from a monsoon will kill everyone, so also a continuous flood of negativity in any community will kill everyone's spiritual enthusiasm. And that's what's been described in today's verse. Because Kamsa continuously sent out a flood of negativity, everyone fled. Just as people flee when there's a monsoon or some type of flood, right? Correct? So in this way, Krishna, he called all of the community members back to the community because he had killed Kamsa. And so of course, basically, when a flood of negativity destroys a spiritual community, the first thing, generally speaking, everyone does is blame the manager or managers of that community. But actually, everyone is to blame potentially. For example, we generally say, "I didn't say anything," or "I didn't do anything." But the question is, were you thinking anything? For example, there's something called body language. Simply by our thoughts and body language, we can still send out a flood of negativity. Therefore, today's quote of the day says, "The single raindrop never feels responsible for the flood." So in other words, according to all universal spiritual teachings, we can live our life in one of two ways. One, we can always send out a flood of negativity, or two, we can always build the ship of our character. So the Srimad-Bhagavatam describes how we send out a flood of negativity. Dhyayato vishayam pumsa sangaseshu bhajayate sangat sanjayate kamaha kamakrodo bijayate krodha bhavati samoha samoha shiti vibramaha shiti bramsha buddhinasho buddhinasha pranashati. So this verse, it describes that we send out a flood of negativity through our thoughts, words, and actions. So on the other hand, the Srimad-Bhagavatam describes how we build the ship of our character. Savaimana Krishna pada aravinda yor vachanti vaikunta gunanarvanane. We build the ship of our character with our thoughts, words, and actions. Even Lord Buddha says, "Let no man think lightly of evil, saying in his heart, it will not come upon me. Even by the falling of water drops, a water pot is filled. The fool becomes full of evil, even if he gather it little by little." On the other hand, let no man think lightly of good, saying in his heart, it will not come upon me. Even by the falling of water drops, a water pot is filled. The wise become full of good, even if he gather it little by little. So in other words, if we think negative thoughts, speak negative words, and perform negative actions, then we'll drown in misery. Very simple. On the other hand, if we think positive thoughts, speak positive words, perform positive actions, then we'll undoubtedly float in misery. So therefore, there's a nice quote that says, "Watch your thoughts they become words. Watch your words, they become your actions. Watch your actions, they become your habits. Watch your habits, they become your character. Watch your character, it becomes your destiny. There's also a nice quote that says, we first make our habits, and then our habits make us. And so as far as this boat analogy is concerned, it's one of my favorite analogies. It's described throughout the Gita, throughout the Bhagavatam, and throughout the Chaitanya Charitamrita many times. But in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, verse 36, it says, even if you are considered to be the greatest sinner of all sinners, if you are situated on the boat of transcendental knowledge, then you will be able to cross the ocean of nescience, the ocean of misery. And so it says, even if you are considered the greatest sinner of sinners. So what does that mean? That means because we perform so many sinful activities, either in this life or in previous lives, it's known as karma. We receive a flood of negativity from our own karma, you could say. But still, that's no reason to become depressed or discouraged. So what's the solution? That's the problem. The solution is we build the ship of our character. So even when we're experiencing a flood of negativity from our own karma, we remain undisturbed, just as a person remains undisturbed when a flood comes if they built the ship. So this ship analogy reminds me of one of my most favorite quotes. It says, ships don't sink because of the water around them. Ships sink because of the water that gets in them. We can't stop everything on the outside, opposition, criticism, rumors, or traffic. But if we allow us on the outside to get on the inside, then we'll sink into depression, fear, anger, and vengeance. So there's also one of my other favorite ones. It says, people should live in a world, but not be filled with it. A ship lives in the water, but if the water gets into the ship, she sinks. So people may live in a world, but if the world gets into them, they sink. Samsara sindum ati dushnanam utisho nanya plavo bhagavata purushotamasa lila kata rasini shevanam antarenam. So this is a very nice verse related to the subject matter, and it's described in the 12th canto, chapter 4, verse 40 of the Bhagavatam. And it says, Samsara sindum. If you want to cross this sindum, this ocean of samsara, what does samsara mean? It means birth and death and all the drama that comes with it, all the flood of negativity that comes with it. If you want to cross this ocean, then nanya plava. Plava means boat. And what is this boat composed of? Lila kata rasini shevanam ansarena, the nectarian pastimes of Krishna, which is what we're discussing every day in Bhagavatam class. So why is it important to discuss these nectarian, this lila kata rasini shevanam, this nectarian pastimes of Krishna? Is because the result of it is that yasyasti bhaktir bhagavatiya kinchana sarva gunais tatra samasate suraha. The result should be sarva gunais. We're meant to build all the good qualities, cultivate all the good qualities. Just like a ship. What is a ship composed of? It's composed of many different parts. The rudder, the steering wheel, the hulls, the decks, so many things. What's the purpose of these components? They're meant to keep the ship afloat and so they can move towards its destination. In much the same way, yasyasti bhaktir bhagavatiya kinchana sarva gunas tatra samasate suraha. The purpose of all these sarva gunas, good qualities, they're like the components of a ship. Humility, tolerance, forgiveness. We need so many good qualities. Why? Just so our peace of mind will stay afloat so that we can move properly towards our spiritual destination. And so, so this is basically the foundation of what we're going to be discussing today. Now, normally when I quote this ship analogy, I also like to mention a famous story in the Holy Bible. It's called Noah's Ark. Ark means a ship. So in the Bible, one day God went to his most devout devotee, one of his most devout devotees named Noah. And he said, "My dear Noah, you have a mess. There's a great flood coming in to destroy all of mankind. Here's the message. Build an ark, a ship, so that you and your family will survive." So in the Gita and in life, we don't need the Gita, we don't need the Bible. But in the Gita, Krishna says, Dukkha layam ashashvatam, that we're all going to experience a flood of difficulties, but you don't need the experience of that. So that's our mess, a flood of difficulty. And what's the message? Build the ship of your character. And so we have our mess. Our mess is given by a messenger to get us out of our mess, especially our mess of sleep. No, I'm just kidding. So anyways, this is an interesting point as far as counsel is concerned, since this verse is describing counsel. So some very interesting points when I was doing this research of this particular topic is that in the Srimad-Bhagavatam, in the 10th canto, chapter 4, verse 23, it actually describes, it's a long story without going into too many details for those who may be familiar with the entire story, but you can always go back and read it. But there's a particular verse in the 10th canto, chapter 4, verse 23, where it describes that, long story short, Kamsa, he heard an omen from the sky. Kamsa, the 8th child of Devaki, your sister, will kill you. So what are you going to do? So Kamsa, what did he decide to do? He decided to kill his sister. But then Devaki's husband, Vasudeva, convinced Kamsa not to do so. So in this way, Kamsa's, you could say this rumor caused Kamsa to send out a flood of negativity motivated motivated by his fear. And so he was even willing to kill his sister, but Vasudeva prevented that. But then, some new information came where he became even more fearful. Then he decided to kill so many babies just to find the Krishna, the 8th child of Devaki. So many things, so many simple activities he committed. But it's described that one baby he was going to kill and bash on a rock. It was actually the incarnation of, or Durga. And so when he was about to smash this baby on a rock, Durga jumped out of this baby form and went into her, I don't know, she could make her manifest herself as big, as tall, as wide as she wants. So she manifested herself with many arms and a large body. And she was basically, that's, one of the most scariest sights you could probably see. As you can imagine. And so she chastised Kamsa in much the same way our mothers chastise us when we when we misbehave. I'm sure most children have experience of that. And so Kamsa became, you could say, so fearful, more fearful of Durga that he was willing to turn his life around. He even, this verse that I mentioned in the 10th canto, chapter 4, verse 23, he was so fearful of Durga and he was so remorseful and that he went to Vasudeva and Devaki and sincerely apologized to them from his heart. And so what happened? Why did Krishna ultimately kill Kamsa? Well, this is described in the 10th canto, chapter 4, verse 43, or 20 verses later from the verse previously mentioned. So it's described that when Kamsa went back to his headquarters, and when he associated with his ministers, his advisors, he basically told them there was a great witch named Durga, and she really chastised me, and I'm completely turning my life around. And so usually, unless you experience something, then it won't have the same effect on you. So when he told his ministers this, I believe he told, I don't remember, but basically his ministers convinced him to go back to his demoniac ways. He was like, oh, you must have been drinking, Counselor, because people like Counselor, they probably do drinking, drugs, and so many intoxicants. So they would probably say, you were just drunk, Counselor. You need to go back to your demoniac ways, basically. So it's described that his ministers and his advisors convinced him to return to his demoniac ways. So what's the lesson we could take from this? A satsanga tiyaga a Vaishnava achar Sri Sangi eka sadhu Krishna a bhakta ar. We become, you could say, more materialistic when we associate. We become like the persons, places, and things we associate with. So this verse says, if we associate with materialists, we become just like them. And Krishna, there's a famous verse. I was thinking of another one, but sadhu sanga sarva shastra koi lava matra sadhu sangi sarva siddhi hoy. Even by a moment's association with the sincere devotee, one can become, you could say, change the trajectory of one's life to the spiritual path. And this is precisely what happened with Kamsa when he associated with Durga. But as soon as he associated with his bad ministers, then he changed the trajectory of his life back to his previous ways. And so this is the power of association. Prabhupada usually gives the example, I think it's in the Bhagavatam also, he usually gives the example, if not in the Bhagavatam, that just as iron rod becomes, if we were born and raised in London, we'll have a British accent. If we were born in the Caribbean, if we were born in, even if you're African American, I know Like just like Kobe Bryant, when he was 6 years old, his father played in the NBA for many years in the U.S., but a lot of times these NBA players, they'll sign contracts with foreign teams in Europe and overseas. So when Kobe Bryant was 6 years old, he went to Italy. And basically, he's more Italian than he is American, actually, because he started school in Italy. So he speaks fluent Italian. And so this is a law of nature. Whatever we associate, we become. And so in the Bhagavatam, there's a nice verse in the 5th canto, chapter 18, verse 13 of the Bhagavatam. It says, Harir hi saksha bhagavan shadirinam amajashana mivatoyam ipsitam idvamaham samyadi sajate griyetadam mahatvam vayasada patinam. So it uses the operative word, jashana. Jashana means aquatics. It says, just as a shark who stays in the ocean is powerful, and the shark who strays from the ocean is powerless, so if we stay in the ocean of Krishna consciousness, we remain powerful. If we stray from this ocean, we become powerless. So we see in this particular case, when Kamsa associated with Durga, even though she disciplined him, he became spiritually powerful. And but when he strayed from this ocean of Krishna consciousness, he became powerless. And so in this way, this powerless caused him to send out a flood of negativity. Now, in most of our lives, generally speaking, when someone sends us a flood of negativity, either through their thoughts, words, actions, body language, the natural response is what? What do you think? Yeah, it's to retaliate with also a flood of negativity. But actually, we see this is not the response of the great saints described in our throughout all spiritual teachings, actually. It's very simple. It's like stupid. It's like somebody saying, let's say, because this temple here in ISKCON Chicago has flooded many times. I remember one pipe flooded, and Jitendra came and got me. He was like, hurry up, get the towels, hurry up. I'm like, Prabhu, it's not like we're in the Titanic. He made it seem like we were in a Titanic. I'm like, it's not that serious. Even though the basement was flooding severely, but he made it seem like it was the Titanic. Then I would have panicked, but apparently for him, I wasn't panicking enough. I got the towels, I was taking my sweet time and stuff, but still we couldn't stop the flood. Well, I was like, Prabhu, I don't think this is possible to stop. You're gonna have to call a plumber, And I was like, I'm not trying to ruin my clothes either. I am attached, so you're gonna buy me new shoes, new clothes, I'm not gonna soak them. So I wasn't really enthusiastic to stop the flood. But it's very simple. It's just like, suppose you could flood a building. So when people send us a flood of negativity, that's like saying, oh, you're going to send me a flood of negativity? I'm going to send you a flood. That's like somebody saying, you're going to open this pipe and flood the building? I'm going to also flood, and we're all going to, drown and die. That's stupid. So we see this is not the response of the great saints. Whenever the great saints are sent a flood of negativity through someone's pride, their envy, or their vengeance, what's their response? They respond with humility, appreciation, forgiveness, the ship of their character. And so therefore, they're always floating in Krishna conscious bliss, whether things go their way or whether things don't go their way. Narayana Parasavina Kutashina Bibiati Swarga Pravargana Dekeshu Apituliyata Darshinaha. Great souls, they don't care whether they're sent a flood of negativity or whether it's whether the ocean is turbulent or whether it's calm, because they're always situated on the ship of their character. And so this is the response of the great saints. And so we know what happened in the pastime of Hiranyakashipu and Prahlad. So there's so many stories that are similar. Like in this particular pastime of Kamsa, what happened? Kamsa, because he sent out a flood of negativity, it destroyed his whole community, right? Krishna killed Kamsa. Krishna killed all of his ministers, all of his advisors, all of his friends, and practically all of his family, except the wives. So that's why it's good to be a woman, save the women and children, right? Every time something, goes down, a school shooting or the Titanic, just like there was one comedian, he says, sometimes women wants to know why men get paid more in their job. And I remember my mother, when she worked one particular job, she was very happy. But when she found out, one of her male coworkers, got paid more, she was, upset. Naturally, I think most of us will. It doesn't matter. Even if we're men and we found out a female coworker got paid more than us, and we're doing the same job. So vice versa, the same thing. But anyways, one comedian says, he was like, sometimes women want to know why men get paid more. He was like, because when the Titanic drowned, they say, get the women and children first. Get the women and children, save them first. That's why we get paid more. So he made a joke like that, everyone has a good situation, everyone has bad situation. I get paid more, but yes, if we're in a tragedy, then you're going to be saved first, and not me, not the man. And so anyways, in this pastime, we see that because Kamsa sent out a flood of negativity, it led to the destruction of him, his friends, his family, his advisors. Same in the pastime of Hiranyakashipu. We could see that, why did Hiranyakashipu's community, Sadhu Sangha, just like, for example, this may be a trick question, but can anyone answer, how many versions of the Srimad-Bhagavatam are there? Can anyone answer? How many versions of the Srimad-Bhagavatam are there? Anybody? Huh? Unlimited? You could say that because Krishna's glories are limited, but actually there are only 2 versions of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, or the Bhagavata Purana. It's the book Bhagavata and the devotee Bhagavata. So there's a nice verse that says, Eka Bhagavata Bada, Bhagavata Shastra, Ada Bhagavata Bhata Bhati Rasa Patra. So this is, I don't remember where the verse is, but you can look it up. It's very simple. The spelling is very easy. But it says, by the mercy of Lord Nityananda, since we just, a few days ago, it was the appearance of Lord Nityananda. So it says, by the mercy of Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya, by their mercy, they send devotees the book Bhagavata, Bhagavata Shastra, and the devotee Bhagavata, Bhakta Bhakti Rasa Patra. And so what's the purpose of the Lord sending us the book Bhagavata and the devotee Bhagavata? It's very simple. It's like when you're building a ship, just like in Noah's Ark, it's actually described in the Bible that the Lord sent Noah a blueprint of how to build the ark. So what's our blueprint? Bhagavata Shastra, the Srimad-Bhagavatam. That's our blueprint. And just as the architect gives the construction workers a blueprint, so also Krishna gives us, Krishna, the original architect, he gives us our blueprint, the Srimad-Bhagavatam, and he gives us nice sadhu sangha, devotee association. And so, and when we refer to sadhu sangha, often we hear, I'm going on a little tangent, but I still have time, so, but I think this is a very important point. So when we hear sadhu sangha, we generally think of a pure devotee or self-realized souls, right? And not like a rascal like me giving Bhagavatam class, sitting on the Vyasa sign, So obviously, however, there's a nice verse that Prabhupada actually describes where he got the name Krishna consciousness from. Krishna bhakti rasa bhavitamatihi kriyatam yadikuto api labhyate tatra loyam api mulyam ekalam jama koti sukratir na labhyate. It says, pure devotional service cannot be attained even by millions of births of performing pious activities. So what's the currency to purchase pure devotional service? The currency is loyam, spiritual greed. There's loba, material greed, and there's loyam, spiritual greed. That's the only price you have to pay. Just like if you're suffering, right? Let's say there's a flood of negativity, just like Noah was given a notice. My dear Noah, you have a death notice. You're going to die unless you build a ship, right? So if you're given a death notice, so what's going to happen? You're going to be very eager to build that ship, right? Naturally, when you're given there's a flood coming, it's going to kill you. So you're going to be very eager to build that ship. In much the same way, when we know that we're suffering, just like Prabhupada says, he says, although the material world is full of suffering, we take this suffering as enjoyment. And so therefore, we're not very eager. We have no loyam to build the ship of our character. And so a lot of times when we hear sadhu sangha, we think of the pure devotee, a self-realized soul, the guru. We usually don't think of our equals, our God brothers and sisters, but we see in so many pastimes that Krishna will not always send you a self-realized soul or a quote-unquote pure devotee or a quote-unquote Diksha guru to get you out of the flood of your difficulty in that particular moment. Just like there's so many pastimes, but I'll just mention just like if you're floating, I'll give an analogy, then I'll mention the pastimes related to this. Just like if you're stranded in the ocean, right? And you're looking for some help. And suppose a rowboat comes, a rowboat. Will you reject the rowboat? My dear robot, no thank you. I'm looking for a cruise ship to save me. So in much the same way, we're always looking for a cruise ship, a self-realized soul, a pure devotee, our guru, elevated devotee. So many, you could say, adjectives to describe, people we think can save us, which they can, but that doesn't mean Krishna will always send them to save you in that particular moment. Just like Durvasa Muni, when he needed help, right? He went to Lord Vishnu for help when he committed the offense against Ambarish Maharaj. So he says, my dear Lord Vishnu, you are the boat, the cruise ship that can save everyone. Please help me. What did Lord Vishnu say? No, you need a rowboat. Go to Ambarish Maharaj. And so there's so many, I'm not going to mention too many examples, but we see throughout a community, it's very easy to go to our guru for help, to go to a self-realized soul, a senior devotee, but it's not so easy to respect our God brothers and our sisters. Why? Because we're always competing. We don't have so much respect. And therefore, we can see in so many pastimes, you won't get the help you need at that moment. Why? Because it won't teach you humility. If you go to your guru, you may not always find the inspiration, not because your guru isn't inspirational, not because he's a self-realized soul, but because it won't teach you humility going to your guru. Just like it wouldn't teach Durvasa Muni going to Lord Vishnu or other elevated demigods. He had to go to Ambarish Maharaj. Same with Daksha, he had to go to Lord Shiva. Same with Pradumna Mishra, he had to go to Ramananda Roy, who seemed to have low kirtan. So in this way, we should understand that if we're always looking for a cruise ship of elevated souls, we may not get the help we need in that moment. Why? Because it won't teach us humility. And so that's our own choice. So this is a very important lesson described throughout the Bhagavatam, throughout the Chaitanya Charitamrita, throughout all spiritual teachings, including the Bible. So anyways, getting back to where a flood of negativity destroys a community, there's also a famous example of Kapila Muni and the 60,000 sons. I remember last time I spoke on this topic, I think Subal probably told me there were 60,000 sons, right? I think I said 10,000, 60,000 sons of a king named Sagar Maharaj. So long story short, there was a king named Sagar Maharaj. He had 60,000 sons. He was obviously very empowered, very potent, unlike members of the Kali Yuga. And he was performing a horse sacrifice. And while performing this horse sacrifice, Indra made himself invisible and stole the horse. Why did Indra steal the horse? Well, it's described that Indra got his very exalted position, his very exalted title, King of Heaven, by performing 100 horse sacrifices. So whenever he saw members throughout the universe performing horse sacrifices, he always wanted to prevent them from doing so, because he always wanted to maintain a superior position, just as we conditioned souls, also influenced by a false ego, always want to be superior to others. And so in this way, Indra disguised himself and stole the horse. So the king told his 60,000 sons, find the culprit who stole our horse and bring him to justice. So in this way, the 60,000 sons of Sagar Maharaj, they went all over the universe. They went to, Mars, Venus, Uranus, Pluto. Finally, they went to the inner earth, I believe. And they came to the ashram of a sage named Kapila Muni. He's actually a Shakti Vaishya avatar of the Lord, an empowered incarnation of the Lord. And so while Kapila Muni was meditating by his ashram, the 60,000 sons of Sagar Maharaj, they noticed that the horse for which they were looking for was right there by his ashram. So they said abruptly, kill him! He stole the horse! There's the culprit! Bring him to justice! So it's described that because of this speculation, this jump to conclusions, it's described that a fire actually emanated from their body and burned them to ashes. And so this is an example to illustrate how we could burn ourselves, our peace of mind to ashes, our you could say our bhakti, but of course bhakti is never destroyed. It may be you could say put on a hold for a moment. But this is an example of how our peace of mind can be burned to ashes, our relationships burned to ashes, our bhakti burned to ashes. And anything we have good going for ourselves in the community can be burned to ashes. So what happened? This is an example of how speculation is one form in which we send out a flood of negativity. And so we could see that this flood of negativity, this speculation, destroyed the whole community of Sagar Maharaj and his children, 60,000 members at least in the community. So this is an example of how the flood of negativity destroys a community. However, like I was mentioning, generally speaking, when people give us a flood of negativity, the natural response is to also retaliate. And so actually it's described on the internet in regards to this pastimes that it's actually, sometimes it's mistakenly described that when Kapila Muni was falsely accused by the 60,000 sons of Sagar Maharaj, it's described like Superman that he burned them to ashes with his eyes. But the Bhagavatam doesn't say that. It says, how can, first of all, alone being a Shakti Vaishya avatar, how can he become angry? No. So there's a nice verse that says, it actually mentions this boat analogy. It's from the Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 8, verse 30. Quote, Kapila Muni innunations. Indeed, a person eager to cross the ocean of the material world may take shelter of this philosophy. And such a greatly learned person, situated on the elevated platform of transcendence, how can there be any distinction between enemy and friend? And so in this way, Kapila Muni, he wasn't disturbed when he was falsely accused. Unlike us, when we're disturbed when we're falsely accused. So this is another example of how someone is given a flood of negativity and how they respond. How do they respond? By building the ship of their character. So there's also another example in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, Madhya Leela. Actually, it's called Madhya Kand, chapter 21. And it's the story of Devananda Pandit and Srivastakur. So long story short, there was a celibate monk named Devananda Pandit, and he was known as a great speaker of Srimad-Bhagavatam. And so he even had his own school with students. So one day, Srivastakur, one of Lord Chaitanya's most intimate associates, was walking by the Srimad-Bhagavatam class given by Devananda Pandit. And so therefore, Srivastakur walked in the class, and he sat in the class, and he humbly listened to the class. And because it's described in this chapter of the Chaitanya Bhagavat, that because every syllable of Srimad-Bhagavatam is infused with love of God, Primanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena. Of course, that verse is from the Brahma Samhita. But it says, because every syllable of Bhagavatam is infused with love of God, when Srivastakur heard every syllable, he became ecstatic in love. He became so ecstatic that he began to laugh, he began to cry, he began to sigh, he began to make a lot of noise. Just like on Sunday feast, normally the speaker says, can you turn your phone off? What's the speaker? Somebody crying, or like the baby's crying. The speaker is like, so naturally, that's a natural response. Naturally, when someone is making a noise. So in this way, it's described that Devananda Pandits. So therefore, it's my duty to get rid of them. And so in this way, he was actually encouraging his students to do so. But this is actually a very important lesson to us, and it's the same lesson we described in the previous pastimes we described. So Devananda Pandit, he sent a flood of negativity to Srivastakur. And naturally, like I said, our response is to respond with also some flood of negativity. But Srivastakur, what did he do? He was Orva Bahu Kadi Kohun Shuna Sarva Loka Nama Sutra Ganti Padakante E Shlok Trinada Pisuni Chena Tador Ivasahishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahadi. He was just humble, tolerant. He was actually very sad too, but he didn't go on cooks. Of course, I love everyone's cooking, but I definitely have to distinguish Mother Himangi's cooking, because it's described that Radharani, she actually cooks in a spiritual world a different meal for Krishna every day for eternity. And I don't know if the members of ISKCON Chicago, have you noticed Himangi? I think that's another word for Radharani, right? If I'm wrong, I think Shankar Pandit says Hima means gold, and it's another name for Radharani. Have you noticed that one day she'll cook like a Japanese cuisine, an Italian cuisine, a cuisine from like Mars, from Jupiter? And I'm like, it's like, and it's a very interesting thing. And maybe she personally told me that when she had to babysit Mukunda Prabhu when he was like 7 years old, she never liked cooking. And so when she, had to babysit Mukunda Russell, in case anyone specifically wants to know who, in Naperville, when he was something like 7 years old, he tasted her cooking for the first time when she was baby. Age is so powerful because there's no way somebody could be more powerful than me. So in this way, his men searched the premises, and they discovered that Jamada Agni had a Kamadhenu cow, a wish-fulfilling cow. And it's described that this cow, unlike, Aladdin, the genie in the bottle, the genie only grants 3 wishes. This Kamadhenu cow granted unlimited wishes. That means Jamada Agni was actually unlimitedly more powerful than Kartavira Arjuna. He couldn't stand that, so he stole the cow. So in this way, he stole the cow and he fled. So when Lord Padashuram came home, he asked his father, "My dear father, where's the Kamadhenu cow?" And he said, "Oh, no problem. Somebody took it, by Krishna's will." He's like, he took it. So in this way, Lord Padashuram, he actually killed Kartavira Arjuna. And actually in this passage, it's described that Kartavira Arjuna was part of a whole dynasty of demoniac kings. And the Lord Padashuram, he killed like, how many, you've heard that 10 generations of demoniac kings, 10,000 generations of, I don't know the exact statistics, but it's described that it's the same analogy we could say, that because Kartavira Arjuna and all these demoniac kings, just like we have so many demoniac politicians and leaders throughout the world, it's described because they sent out a flood of negativity. Finally, their time was up where Lord Padashuram killed so many of them. Why? Because they sent out a flood of negativity that led to their own degradation. But naturally, if we were Jamada Agni, we would probably be happy that Lord Padashuram killed somebody who stole our source of livelihood, right? This Kamadhenu cow was his source of livelihood, right? Wrong. He didn't think so. This is precisely why he didn't retaliate with a flood of negativity. So this reminds me of what His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj says when he was giving sannyas initiation to Amala Bhakta Prabhu, who's now Amala Bhakta Maharaj. He says, Srila Prabhupada was once asked by a devotee for permission to renounce everything. Srila Prabhupada's response was, Krishna owns everything, so what do you have to renounce? The only thing you have to renounce is the misconception that you have something to renounce. And Srila Prabhupada also mentions this in his purports of the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 5, verse 2. So in this way, Jamada Agni, he was thinking, how can Kartavira Arjuna steal something from me that I never owned? Krishna owns everything, so he took everything as Krishna's will. The Kamadhenu is not my maintainer. Krishna's my maintainer. So what's that verse? Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitanana. It never says Kamadhenu Nam Chaitananas. It says Nityo Nitya, the Supreme Lord is maintaining everyone, not a Kamadhenu cow, not our boss, not our money. So many things. So in this way, he had this Shraddha. Shraddhavam, what's that verse? Shraddha Shabde Vishwakai Sudiranandishchoy Krishna Bhakti Kola Sarva Kama Krita Hoy. Our faith should cultivate to the fact that nobody is maintaining us except Krishna. So why worry about anything when things are given to us, when things are taken away from us? We don't own anything. And so in this way, this detachment is, you could say, a component of building the ship of our character. There's a saying, detachment is not that you shall own nothing, but that nothing shall own you. So in this way, the Kamadhenu cow, he owned the Kamadhenu cow. The Kamadhenu cow didn't own him. So when it was taken away from him, he was completely undisturbed. And he could therefore be forgiven. He actually chastised Lord Padashuram for killing him. But, however, the lesson we can take is that from our perspective, we should be like Jamada Agni, very forgiving, building the ship of our character, very detached. But still, nevertheless, if sometimes we act like Jamada, we have a good nature and a bad nature. So sometimes we act like Jamada Agni, and sometimes we act like Kartavira Arjuna. So the lesson we can take in this regard is that if we're from the perspective of Jama da Agni, we should always be very forgiving, very detached, always build the ship of our character undisturbed. However, if we want to act like Kartavira Arjuna, if we want to criticize devotees, become envious devotees, sabotage devotees, then we should expect a reaction from the Lord. But it's not really a reaction from the Lord, it's a reaction from our own the flood of our own negativity. So in this way, sometimes we're in both positions. So we should, this is what our response, so this is what the Bhagavatam describes, what our response should be in certain circumstances. So in this way, this is our topic for the day. It's 8:30, 8:31. Are any comments, questions, criticism regarding this subject matter? Otherwise, I'll share one more thing that I was thinking of sharing.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I came late, but I read the verses. I can see the connection, especially what I heard was...
Prabhu, this was the same class on my last class on Christmas Eve, about the ships and stuff. So if you remember, it's basically the same as that class. So if you don't know what I talked about, that's what I talked about, if you can remember, but go ahead.
Well, what I appreciated was that, the verses say that Krishna brought all these devotees from all, different parts to be part of his the Mathura kingdom, the whole kingdom of the Yadus. So, and he satisfied and he gave them all kinds of wonderful things, Even the old people were youthful. So they received gifts, they received kindness, they received, all kinds of arrangements that Krishna made. So you have all these different devotees who were brought together, and they were, provided with all the facilities that they needed. And then in terms, they were very grateful and very happy, and, and the whole thing was very harmonious, in terms of serving Krishna. So the comparison of needing, a whole team of devotees, of being, the emphasis in the community of devotees, the Sangha of devotees together, and the power from the devotees of being grateful for the facilities and for the arrangements that are there, and grateful to Krishna for just like this, just to come together every morning and hear Bhagavatam. This is, the luxury of the world, So to have that type of gratitude is important. So,
to have that type of what?
Gratitude.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so I appreciated the, I wish I could have been here, from the beginning, but we got stuck in the snow.
Oh, okay.
Yes, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, you reminded me of like it's a luxury, just like a luxury or privilege to hear Srimad-Bhagavatam in association with devotees, or any services really, to come to the temple. It's a privilege. It reminds me of one day, sometimes Christian high schools or colleges come to the temple for comparative philosophy. And I remember one day my brother was giving the class to this Christian high school or college. And one of the students at the end of my brother describing Krishna consciousness, they asked him, "So what do you guys do for fun?" So my brother said, "You mean reading the Bible and doing devotional service isn't fun? Then how long will we do it?" So Krishna na mahamatra etasua bhava yejapetada Krishna upajaya bhava. This verse from the Chaitanya Charitamrita says we could get all our bhava, all our fun, all our ecstasy from chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. But, of course, what's that verse Rupa Goswami says, if we have the jaundice of ignorance, then we cannot, just like if you have a disease known as jaundice, then you cannot taste anything that's sweet. But the cure for it is to go on chanting. But actually, it's not just to go on chanting, because yes, that verse says that in Nectar of Instruction, but there are also so many other instructions. It says go on chanting and humility. Bahujama kade yadi shravana kirtan tabutana paya Krishna pade premadam. It's not only what we chant, but how we chant. Just like if you take a medicine, Prabhupada mentions in the introduction to Gita, it's not that we just take a prescription, some medicine. What's important is how you take it also. So it's not mainly what we chant, but how we chant it. If we're not chanting humility, then we won't get the taste. We won't get the sweetness. Only Krishna could give us the sweetness. We could quote, like for me, I could quote all Shastra I want. But we could take it for granted that if Krishna says chant in humility, then I'll give you the taste. So only we could get the taste by mercy, not by struggling, Hare Krishna, keep chanting, I'll get the taste. No, if you chant and you hate people, if you criticize, if you slander, then you probably won't get that taste. And so basically, I have no idea what I was going with this, but you reminded me, your comment, one main point I wanted to also mention it, is that it's a privilege. It's a privilege to serve in this community. And one lesson we can take, there's so many pastimes that describe this, one lesson we can take is that we should not think people are dependent on us in any community, in any spiritual community. It's actually a great privilege. And we're not entitled to anything because Krishna could get anyone to serve in his community, or he can expand himself. Just like in the Brahma Vimohan Leela, it's described that once upon a time, Lord Krishna and his cowherd boys, the calves, were all playing, having lunch. One day, Krishna went off to the forest to find the calves or the cows. And it's described that the demigod Brahma wanted to play the trick on Krishna. So he stole all the cowherd boys and, the calves or whoever, definitely the cowherd boys. So he was like, oh, I can't wait to see Krishna's reaction when I return to the site of the kidnapping and see what he thinks about, this illusion. So it's described that Lord Brahma stole the cowherd boys, hid them in a cave. Then when he came back to the scene of the kidnapping, he was shocked. He was like, they're still there. What happened? I just stole them. So it's described that Lord Krishna expanded himself as the cowherd boys, the calves. And not only that, he was even a greater Subal than even Subal. He was even a greater Jaya Baladeva than Baladeva. He was greater. If we think we're great, Krishna could be us even greater. If we think we're a good singer, Krishna could do way better than us. So the lesson we can take is that in any spiritual community, we shouldn't think, this community is dependent on me. If I'm not here, I'm the heart of this community, then it will die, it will drown. No, Krishna could either replace us with somebody else, he can empower somebody, other devotees, or he could replace us with himself. So it's actually a great privilege and a great luxury to come in, just like a heart transplant, just like Indra, just like Hiranyakashipu, just like even Brahma in his Brahma Vimohan Leela. They were thinking, I'm the heart of this community. If this community doesn't have me, then it will die. Just like if your heart isn't working, right? Your body will die. This body is like a community. In Brahma, Hiranyakashipu, Indra, they was thinking they were the heart of this community. But what happens when a person has heart disease? You get a heart transplant. So in this way, Krishna could transplant us with anyone, or he could transplant us with himself. So we should never think any community is dependent on me. We should always be very humble, very grateful, and consider any opportunity, even if we had to clean a toilet with a toothbrush. Jitendra, I speak for him. He's been here for so long. He's done, things, so much sewage cleanup and this and that nobody would do. I'm not even going to go that far. So that's why he's here so long. Grateful and humble. So we could learn a lot from Jitendra Prabhu, especially since he's senior to all of us. So anyway, that's my answer to that. We have 5 minutes left. I guess Sevananda wants to say one thing. I'll make it short if you make it short.
Before the class, you asked me to remind you of appreciation that you wanted to make.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, Naveen Krishna Prabhu. I wanted to really just like Durvasa Muni had to apologize to Naveen. Me too. Actually, a few. I'm not going to throw them under the bus, but basically, when Naveen was gone to India, here's. I was meditating on this point. There are basically two types of managers: a macro manager and a micromanager. It's like Krishna in the spiritual world playing with the gopis. He's like a macro manager. He's far away, right? And a micromanager is like Vishnu. You know, he's always there, always. So the difference between Vishnu and Naveen Krishna Prabhu is that Naveen Krishna Prabhu is there. But I'm saying that's a good thing. That's a good thing because when he was gone, it was a lot of chaos. I'll speak for myself, but I'll mention, I'm not going to throw any devotees under the bus, but a few devotees said, we miss Naveen Krishna Prabhu. If he was here, you know. So my whole point is that we need a balance in the community. We need macro managers who are not so uptight, and we need micromanagers who are uptight. Therefore, this balance is also, so a lot of times, Krishna will put us in a situation where we can appreciate all devotees and their contributions. So we need all devotees, macro managers who live far away. So that's what I was like, oh, the macro managers, they live far away. This is nice. But then we almost got into a fight, almost kill each other. I was like, if Naveen was here, they'll get on him. And So it's a joke, but it's actually a true joke. So Krishna will put us in a situation to appreciate all devotees. And I'm speaking from not myself, at least 2 or 3 other devotees who told me the same thing. We miss Naveen. So I'm very grateful that he's back here. So anyway, so thank you for reminding me of that. So anyway, we'll end there. So Granta Raj Srimad-Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki Jaya. Gaura Premanande Hare.